Where is Adam?
Adam had an injury. No, he injured himself playing football, and
He wasn't supposed to be playing football.
Long time ago.
Oh.
He injured himself for Ball Street.
For Ball Street, yeah.
And he twisted his ankle. He's done his ACL many times, and now he had an operation on Friday.
Ah, shit.
And so he can't walk. So James is... I mean, you bloody love football, Kristen.
I do.
You love football. We thought James loved football, but you bloody love football. Out of the people I know that bloody love football, you are at the top of that list.
As my dad would say, if the Nagasaki Warriors were playing the Raggy Arse Rovers, you'd watch it.
Yeah, you would. Your dad is 100% spot
and
on.
Probably pick out a player that's going to go on to greatness.
Absolutely.
I'd like to think so.
How are you, Kristen Heneage?
I'm not bad, yeah. How are you guys? Right.
Yeah, very well.
This is nice. This is it doesn't feel as formal as a lot of podcasts. You know what I mean?
Is that what? I mean, do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
Yeah. Very, not just football though, like all sorts of stuff.
What do you like? What creeps onto your top 5? What one are you waiting for it to be updated? And you know, sometimes you're travelling, it's not there, and you're like, oh fucking hell, I really want to listen to that. What's up there?
Which one?
Which
Long Ball Streets.
Well,
that's there.
You know, it's standard.
yeah.
But other than us,
Yeah.
There's a politics one that's, I think it's called In God We Trust or something. It's got some clever name. The Morning Joe show, that's an MSNBC.
Right, okay.
So pretty political at the minute. Just trying
Yeah, pretty political.
Yeah, just trying to...
Gonna go into a new, start changing the world. You changed the world of football.
MP.
Now you're gonna...
No, I don't think I've got the skin for that.
How do you guys know each other?
Lawrence, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. No, I think it was Lawrence actually. I think it was Stu. Somehow got to know you.
Was I not working as a waitress in a cocktail bar?
And then I saw you. I the first time I met you was, I think, did you come down for Bickham Ball Street? You know, we did the transfer deadline day show with Righty and the Beast and Nihal and Marcus.
Yes, but the first time I remember working with you guys was you did a hangout.
Google Hangout.
With UEFA.
That's right, yeah.
When I had a lovely Donny Osmond-esque type mop, and I was
Nice.
It's in Lawrence's old house actually.
Right, okay.
Nice.
So maybe it was then through Lawrence and Marcus.
I didn't know Marcus at that point. No.
Right, okay.
Marcus came after that.
So it's through the beginning of Ball Street.
It was through
some work with UEFA and Ball Street. Is that right?
Well, we did a Google Hangout from Google HQ. We went down Righty and that. It was in the really early days. And you were on and Marcus was on, and then off the back of that, and so Stu, who, like, I would never sit here and say they're a good journalist because I don't think I'm qualified to say, and I don't really read much, but Stu was a big fan of your work. Stu, for anyone watching, is like my mate,
the lesser seen.
Because of the beard.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he was a huge fan of yours, and then we ended up doing the 451 show. I don't know if anybody here watching this would actually remember that show. Probably not, but it'd be nice if they did.
That was a heady 6 weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you came down and then you stayed at my house. He stayed at my house.
We lived together for a little bit, yeah.
I know.
As mad as that sounds.
Scrappy loved him.
What's going on?
Oh, Kathy, we're not started yet. Just come in. Just come in and sit down for a bit, it's fine. Kath, just come. Kath, no, cheers, Kath. Cheers, Kathy. There she is.
The lesson spotted Kathy as well. For a media agency, no one wants to go in front of camera. It's getting pathetic. Kristen.
YouTube comments are to blame for that, I think.
Yeah. Go on, get out.
Thanks, Kathy.
They will find any insecurity you have.
Kristen.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about you then, like, because one of the most fascinating. You're right about. I actually looked on. I googled you. I didn't know, but I was just interested in what you done. And it's just. I couldn't get to the end of all the Google pages for all the articles that you've written about football. But we can talk about that. But the most interesting thing I think about you is the fact that you lived in America to scout footballers for Seattle Sounders. How did that come about? I mean, everybody when playing as Championship Manager or Football Manager wants to be a scout someday. It's just... There's nothing greater when playing that game to find a player and making great that no one else has heard about it, and you kind of did it for real.
It was so I was quite lucky. I knew the assistant coach, a chap by the name of Kurt Schmidt. We just happened to follow each other on Twitter, and I DM'd him and said, "Look, there's 5 players in what is the second tier in America that I think could make a difference on your team right now. like to varying levels. Obviously, some would start, some would be on the bench, etc., etc. And so he let me pitch those 5 guys, and people very rarely acknowledge this kind of stuff when they tell these kind of stories. I got very lucky that one of those guys, a chap by the name of Miguel Ibarra, got picked for the US not long after. Right. So you know when Jay Bothroyd got picked for England and he was at Cardiff, it was a similar sort of thing. Like if the US picks players from its domestic leagues, it's very rarely, if ever, NASL. It's usually exclusively MLS.
Right.
So the fact that he got picked, it was like, oh, he must be decent.
So what's the other one? SLF?
And
NASL.
So this is for people that don't know, i.e. me. Is that just because they're not divisions? There's no divisions in.
It is and it isn't. It's such a weird state of affairs. MLS is top.
Yeah.
NASL and then, if my memory serves, USL Pro is now. They're both kind of share Division 2 status, but there's no link between it. You can't.
So these are separate organisations, much like you'd have the UFC and Bellator and Cage Warriors as organisations within the sport of MMA.
Right.
So they're separate organisations which have not got the same power and the same books as the MLS.
And they sell their own rights and have their own commercial deals in the same way.
Essentially, yeah.
So
I'm guessing that's North American Soccer League, right?
It is, yes. Yeah. The very same one from the 70s that had Pele and Beckenbauer.
Wow.
It folded because it just spent in a very haphazard way, and then came back in 2009, I think.
Yeah.
And sort of I think it tried to feed a little bit on nostalgia.
I know someone who works for the owner of one of those football clubs, Miami FC.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Yeah. He actually wants to come on the bullshit. He wants to come on this pod.
Get him on.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
What does he talk about now? I know someone that.
I've got to nail that bit down.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
But yeah, he works for the owner of Miami FC, and the Miami FC is put in. Is it Miami FC? Am I getting it right?
There is Miami FC. Is it the one coached by Nesta?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
yes, it is.
That's
Nesta,
the NASL one.
The
Nesta was fucking amazing.
He was the nuts.
He was.
And beautiful.
Yeah. Clean shorts defender, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Always on his feet, didn't have to.
Yeah, never touched the ground.
So you had a punt. Essentially,
yeah.
So you how did you find these 5 players?
Champman, please tell me it was Champman.
Was it?
You know, I've used it before. I've
You've
definitely used it.
You've got it, haven't you? It's like the amount of infrastructure behind their research, and it's a great database.
The beauty, I think, of scouting is there are so many potential tools you can use. Really, there is not one, I think at least, settled school of thought on how to do it.
Right, okay.
So there are some people I've spoken to who will only use their eyes.
Right.
They'll go and watch and they'll say, Matt Wilson's got a good touch, he's got this, he's got that.
It's true.
Etc., etc. There are other people who will use analytics and say, well, he had this many touches in the opposition box, so that makes him a good... Some will use a combination of a lot of different ones. I varied it depending usually on the situation. So I even use journalistic tools. I would ring up people for character references.
Right.
Is he a good guy? Is he a teammate?
Yeah.
Can he take instruction? Is he going to throw a strop if he has to do more defending than he does here? Just little things like that. So, because you're trying to build... It's a little bit like matchmaking. You've got to try and build a fairly detailed collage of not just a person's career, but what they're like to be at the club. Because there's so many players you can probably think of your own clubs who rocked up, and within a few weeks, the local newspaper or fans were saying he's a bad influence in the squad. I'm hearing he's an absolute nightmare to be around.
It's like the I guess in the NFL draft. So they have there's the stats that they've done at college and the game tape for that. Then they have a thing called a combine, whereby they're measuring things like their speed, their cone drills, their vertical jumps, and various things like that to get their to get the stats around their physical attributes. But then as well, what they will do is when they're going to be drafting someone, they'll try and get interviews with them. They'll try and they'll go to great depths to fill in the character bits, because football's it's chemical. It's like anything. It's the chemical components that exist within a team. So there might be certain things that you need to have a bit more of or a bit less of. So what they'll do, they'll go and speak to the kit man from the college. They'll speak to people that played in the team, that people that worked at the diners where the kids used to go and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's where I think a lot of American sports are far superior in terms of the way that they look at it. Whereas football's always seemed a little bit like when they choose managers, a bit jobs for the boys. It's like, well, he used to play. I know him from, let's give him a chance to be a manager. When actually, are they really qualified? Are they clever enough?
Yeah. I think in that aspect, you've got to give yourself as many opportunities for success. you've got to say, well, is he a good fit for what we want to do? Equally, is he a good fit for our manager? Is our manager the kind of person who's going to put his arm around him if he gets, and does he need that? It's like I say, it is very much about matchmaking, because I'm sure it's the same in business. When you hire someone, you interview them for that very reason. You ask them what's your strengths, what your weaknesses.
Yeah.
If you ask that to a player, it's hard to get that level of introspection from a personality standpoint.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to maybe talk to teammates, you have to talk to coaches, and just kind of work out little things like that. There was a player I suggested who physically was perfect, was very similar to Yaya Toure in so much as could just burst past guys. He came in on trial, and unfortunately he just couldn't grasp the tactical side of things. He couldn't take instruction on, so they passed on him. It's things like that.
Yeah.
That's the other issue I think as well, is you can't be too sensitive, because you can think you've got the next best thing, but if he doesn't tick the boxes for your higher ups, it's not going to go through.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's always fascinating how a player can play at a club and they can be amazing, right? They can do really well. And then you take that player out, you bring him to your team, and you could ask this next set of supporters that have then, after 10 games, they're going, this guy's the worst player that's ever played for us, he's terrible. And then he can go on somewhere else and be a success again. So there's no such thing as a sure thing, isn't there? But I think that the important bit is the feel for the chemical, the psychology, the mix, like you say, the matchmaking. I think that's vital, really.
Yeah.
So how have you been? Because from where I'm standing, I'm looking at what you're saying. I'm thinking this feels quite. How much has America influenced you in this kind of perspective that you have? And are there a lot of people like you in England that is looking at it this way, or do you think, hang on a minute, I'm fucking onto this, and everyone's still looking at the old stuff, you know?
No, I think England is slowly changing. I look at someone like Ted Knutson, who's American and works here. I think he brings a lot of good ideas with him, not just analytics, but I'm talking about general overview stuff. I think it's difficult to truly compare the two, because I haven't been fortunate enough to work very exclusively with English clubs, so I can't tell you. Right. And the other thing as well is everyone is different. Every coach is different. I remember being asked once, are coaches using analytics? I would have to survey every single one, because for every coach that you allude to being of the older practices and just using their eyes, there are one or two who will say, no, I want to see numbers. I want to see how many key passes does he register, how many assists per 90 minutes, that kind of stuff. It's everyone is different and unique in their own special way. Yeah. And I'm hoping that's the lesson we can take from today.
I think I think the people, there's some happy medium in it all, because I can't listen to, and there's no offence to Statman Dave, but I can't listen to who? Statman Dave. Oh. I can't listen to people talk in an analytical way about football for too long. I can't. I couldn't do a whole podcast of it. It's fascinating talking to some people who do approach the game that way, and it's but for me and my understanding of football and the way I absorb it, that very cold way of looking, how many key passes, how many things, is.
Would you say you're an emotional viewer then? You would rather talk about the feeling of the moment rather than what actually happened. Yes. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's all that.
100%.
He's all that, and he's got his hands down his trousers while he's doing it.
I thought you meant now. I had to quickly scan. I was like, really
that could happen. That could happen. Not a problem. Only problem if you make it one, Matt. All right.
Sorry, mate.
I mean, that's in fairness. Like I said, I've done journalism of that ilk as well. Like I very rarely. There's not many even I can think of tactical pieces I've done that were like this type of stuff that Dave does.
Yeah,
it's a lot more emotional. Kind of. This is the person. I remember there was a kid in the US who. He came from Colombia. His mother lived on the front line of a drug war.
Wow.
So he would ring home to speak to his mum, and he'd hear gunshots over the phone. And he used to sleep in, like a six-a-side. When they've got loads of six-a-side pitches? Yeah. Those little, I don't want to name a company for free advertising, but that kind of place. He would sleep in there so he could train all day. He eventually got drafted, and he's telling me this entire story. And he said, I got drafted quite late, and I remember crying. And I'm genuinely on the different end of the phone going, and then what happened? Genuinely emotional, this guy, because he's taken me on this massive journey. And that's why I love football, because it can take someone like him who's got nothing and give him so much.
Okay, what happened?
He got drafted into MLS. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of a steep turn for him because
this.
he developed alcohol problems.
Oh,
and
mate.
the positive, I think the ultimate positive is that led him to take stock of his life, admit that he'd had some personal problems with sexual abuse as a youngster, got himself back together, is now back on the second team of the club that he joined from the Combine, and is really getting his life back together. But he is genuinely one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
What a story.
Yeah.
I mean, is that story out there? You've rewritten it?
Not recently, but again, it's that kind of story. The difficulty is, I go into these people's lives and I say, open up to me. I know we've just met, but open up to me. And that can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Because...
Who are you?
That's the thing, you can ask them questions. I know that there was one player in particular, I remember interviewing him, and he didn't want to open up at all. Did not want to, and just shut it down to the point where it's like, look, are we done yet? And I was like, okay, no problem. You have, in that sense, you have to respect people's boundaries.
Of course, but what are you asking?
Just, he actually recently, much like yourself, he just had a child, and I said, how has fatherhood changed you, and how has marriage changed you? And he said, are you a father or a husband? And I said, I'm not. He said, well, I can't really explain it then, which was a good cop out in a lot of ways, because it meant he didn't really have to go deep in.
But what did you want to? Why did you want to? What did you want to find out, and why?
I wanted to ask him that specifically because he was a young guy, quite a confident guy. Seemed very much, without wishing to besmirch him, focused on the outer. Yeah. And I was curious whether that had changed him internally, because I know you've talked that it's shifted you, and it's that idea of, you want to get to know, because the last 2 questions I ask almost exclusively every interview is, can you tell me your first football memory ever? Like, not at a pro level, I'm talking like when you were a kid playing for your Sunday League team. Yeah. And can you tell me something about yourself that's never come up in an interview before? And sometimes it yields amazing stories. Yeah. Other times
that's tough, though. It's a tough question.
It is.
But why do you need to know this stuff?
Because sometimes that's your lead. So for example, I'll give you an example. Kyle Larin, striker for Orlando City. We did the interview and all that, and it was all fairly good, bog standard stuff. And then I asked him to tell me, and he said, the first trial I ever did were in basketball shoes, big high tops. And he said, from there I got on a team and all this kind of thing. And that was the lead. That he started from like basketball shoes, and now he's got his own potential boot deals and all this kind of thing. Yeah. From humble surroundings and all that kind of stuff. Like I say, it often depends how confident the person is in telling their own story, because it's very.
Sorry, but how does this help him become a better footballer, or how did that help you scout him? And then what?
I'm talking purely from a journalistic standpoint.
Right. When I'm sitting there thinking, you're going around to players, scouting them, asking them.
I'm talking.
Right. I misheard you.
In terms of actually speaking to players directly, I never really do that. Yeah. There's no benefit.
When someone's being scouted, are they aware that they're being scouted? And how? Like you say, you you go into finding personal information, so schoolmates, and there's this geezer like just turned up asking loads of questions about, I don't know who he is.
Ball went out for a throw in. Went to pick it up. And there's a guy in my ear. Excuse me, mate.
Agents will usually find out.
Yeah.
They'll be self-aware enough to know whether a scout is in attendance. The thing is, they publish who's attending every game anyway. Yeah. So you don't know who they're watching necessarily, but you know if they're in attendance, and usually you can piece 2 and 2 together.
How long was you scouting in the US for?
I worked with Seattle for just under 2 years. Yeah, about just under 2 years.
And how many players would you say you scouted for them in that time?
Oh, wow. I would say a lot more than 50, probably less than 150.
Is that a good rate for a scout?
So when you said these are players you scouted for, these are players that you went back and went yes or no on, or these are players that you recommended to them?
A little bit, because the remit it wasn't necessarily... It evolved over time. So in the latter stage of my time with them, they would say, we're looking at Flav, we're looking at Matt, what can you tell us about them? Because there was a few who were European based, so I could reach out and do that kind of thing. In other instances, they would say, we want a right back, and then I would say, okay, well, what kind of right back? There's a lot of different types of right back.
Just on Chapman now. Yeah. What do you want? Do you want him fast?
Pace 18.
Danny Alves. I'd give him a try. He's on a free in 2019. But they would say a position, and then I would have to go and try and find a player that met that criteria. and that financial.
How would that process start? Would it be maybe using a statistical package, or what would you first step? Kristen, I need an attacking midfielder, a number 10 player. Go and get me one.
So what I would do personally at the time, anytime I would watch a game, if there was someone I thought had potential for the league, I would write them down. And then it would be a case of, a bit like your parents used to keep a phone book when we were little, like plumbers and electricians. It'd be a similar attacking midfielders. Kind of similar and then they would be separated by age and all that. So I tried to stay as organised as possible because I didn't personally have access to detailed analytics. I was a one-man band in that sense.
Did you have any mentors helping you?
No, it's very much learning.
So it's just you thinking this is the correct way to organise and approach the problem / the challenge.
I've been fortunate. I've been able to. I mentioned Ted Knutson there. He's been kind of to give me a little bit of advice just on the industry as a whole and how to progress. But actually doing it, there was little bits. Honestly, there's things you pick up even talking to people. I did a piece with Marcus Rashford's youth coach about 2 months ago. I think it was on the anniversary of his debut for Man United. And in talking to him, I said, how on earth do you find Marcus Rashford at 9? Because it's just a massive group of kids. And he said, well, if they look like a footballer at a young age, that's usually a good sign. If they carry themselves like a footballer.
You know how someone walks, whether they can play football, generally.
Which is why Colin Quanner, who we signed from Union Berlin, we signed him within one touch. You're just like, what the fuck is this guy doing on the field? He's never been he's not a footballer. Just because he runs like so awkward.
That's fascinating. Yeah, let's come back to that though, because I want to know how Huddersfield ended up, what might have happened to get in there. But what were we talking about?
So I spoke to the youth coach and he said if he carries himself like a footballer, and then I want to say maybe 2-3 days later I went to watch Spurs in the Youth Cup, and I was just watching the players warm up, and you'll probably know him, Keenan Bennett.
No idea who he is.
I was watching him warm up and I was like, it's that same thing. It's like, he does really look like a footballer. And about 2 minutes in...
Aren't they all footballers?
But do you know what I mean? He carries himself like a first-team player.
Right, gotcha.
If you put him in a Premier League game, you wouldn't think he's got a terrible touch. Or you wouldn't think he's a kid. That's probably the best way to explain it. And literally, within 2 minutes of the game starting, he does 2 step-overs, cuts inside and bangs it into the top corner. And that's where you think, okay, there's clearly something in that. So
What's
that's
his
a
name?
lesson... Keenan Bennett, I believe his name.
Right, because I did the Spurs podcast.
Yeah,
I'm going to pretend I know this kid. Keenan Bennett.
I'm going to pretend.
And then I think Bennett.
Have you not seen this kid? Kid did step over.
Yeah, he's very. He's Marcus Edwards.
Yeah.
Similar sort of model to that, like very small, low centre of gravity.
Was Pochettino right to say he is the next Messi? I mean, he may not have said that, but he said he plays football like him.
The difficulty is there's probably more nuance in Pochettino's statement than the headline writers allowed for there. Yeah, so you can say he's Messi-like. It doesn't mean he's going to be...
Messi-esque.
Yeah, there's certain similarities. I'm sure you've all watched players and thought he plays just like X or Y or...
Yeah.
That's why the new Messi or the new Ronaldo...
Yeah, it's when you draw... I mean, Argentina's had a massive problem with that. Yeah. Like you go back to Andres D'Alessandro and all this, any decent prospect they've had, new Messi. Because he can carry a ball. It doesn't allow for all of the things. Well, can he finish? Is he dedicated? These kind of... It's a massive collusion of different...
What was that player you said? Huddersfield player?
I don't need to talk about him. I just an example of someone that you can tell, can't you, by the way that someone moves sometimes, the way that their touches.
He's an awkward player to watch.
He's fucking horrible to watch.
How did he get scouted though? How does a player who's not right for a football club end up? How did that guy end up at Huddersfield? Do you think? Is it agents? Is it money? Or is it a scout going seeing something?
I would imagine, based on what I've seen of him, he's a big physical guy, target man-esque.
Can't edit, won't edit. Can't head, won't head.
I reckon Wagner looked at him and thought, I need that type of player. Because the thing you got to remember is he came in with no real chance to prepare. He had that 6 months before to keep them up. And then he got the likes of Casey Palmer in. You're never really sure how someone like that's going to pan out. So if you can get a cheap contingency and you know what Kwana's going to do because he's been playing for years, I'm not terribly adverse to that strategy. By the same breath, I know we've talked a lot about Moussa Sissoko. I look at that situation and I see a coach who knew exactly what he wanted, which was a player who'd run him behind, and assumed a fairly fleet-footed or quick winger in Moussa Sissoko could do that without actually checking if he does that.
No way.
Yeah, that's
not on £30 million. Yeah, it's 30 million. I think he can do that. I've seen it before. Do you reckon? He creates chaos.
He does, yeah, massively.
I mean, that's his thing. Creates chaos on the football pitch. No one knows what's going to happen when he comes on. Go on, get on there.
Yeah.
Create some chaos.
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, madness.
The thing is, though, you've talked about Sterling and using him in different systems. There was probably a part of Pochettino that thought, you know what, he's got the physical qualities that I need a player. He can run in this distance and this time. I can teach him. I can train him to do what I want him to do. But again, didn't really check. And for 30 million, yeah, that's a pretty egregious mistake. But I think it's unfair to pin it on him because there was probably a committee that put that decision together.
And he had a good international tournament. Euros. Oliver Burke.
Yeah.
Right. So they bought it in.
Is that the kid from Forest?
Yes.
That went
Signed for
to Leipzig. Yeah. Fucking hell, man. So he's early. When did he go? Because he started the season in the Championship.
Yeah.
He scored a few goals which were very reminiscent of Bale. Ball over the top, moving at sheer pace, taking it in stride whilst cutting inside a couple of defenders and then having the strength, the composure to finish. And I remember seeing him, maybe it's on like the first month of the season or something like that, and I was like, he's a fucking world beater. You can see it now. What's he doing? Because obviously he went to Leipzig and I'm not going to see him out there, am I?
Because the manager said that he was like, he's got all the talent, but he's like a blank book. We have to teach him how to play football.
Yeah, I think he said he's like an unprogrammed computer or something, and we have to give him the software. I think was the analogy.
Yeah,
it's a pretty decent analogy to be fair.
I like that.
It's not like
he's got a virus.
Thick as shit.
He's got a virus.
He is thick.
Sounds great in German though.
Yeah,
translates wonderfully.
But Bale was it takes time for people to grow. Yeah. You know, like it's just like, what do you know at 19 years old? You know, in life, in anything really. It's some I think are amazing when they're young, and maybe look worse when they're older because it's all about the physical side of it for them. But if you can get in the right place and they can kind of grow you as a player, and physically you're able to avoid injuries and look after yourself and kind of stay fit, then I think you've got a real chance. But I guess that with someone like him. Like Bale at first, all that physical attributes, but he was playing left back, man. He was playing left back for ages. Yeah. And it's only kind of as he went on that they started to kind of play him really for him and look at what he's become. You know.
Redknapp nearly sold him, if I remember correctly.
To Forest. He was going on loan. Yeah. So he was a left back. Gareth Bale was a left back, but he couldn't get in the team. And Benoit Sissoko got injured, and the loan to Nottingham Forest was cancelled. I think this is right. It was either that or a £3 million deal was in place. Something crazy.
He was going to be sold, yeah.
And then he came into the team and he just flew. He would get the ball and just get from the left back, make the byline 9 times out of 10.
But the thing is with that, there's a saying I think is very true to football. Success has 1,000 fathers. Failure is an orphan. And what I mean by that is, someone like Harry Redknapp will rarely, if ever, say, yeah, I nearly sold Gareth Bale for $3 million. But he'll definitely tell you about the punt for 100,000 that turned out to be great.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a bit of a culture in that in football. You only talk about your successes.
It's like that in life, though, mate, not just in football. Yeah.
That's true. Do you want to talk about that? I sensed an emotional moment.
No, it is. I mean, yeah, that's not just a football quote, is what I mean. It's true in anything. It's like it's in business, isn't it? When something goes wrong, everyone's like, well, fucking, I tell you what, I told him. Yeah. I told him. But when something's gone right, people are like, yeah, I think that was me. Yeah. I said the first email on that. You know, that's what people are like.
I went around claiming responsibility for a good idea that wasn't mine, but I convinced myself that it was mine.
What was the idea?
Uber. Do you know what it was? Actually? It was used. It was. This won't mean any. Sorry, I didn't even hear what you said. It would have been Tony. It was just getting Tony D to come and do the forfeit for Mondo Goal that we did last year. So it doesn't mean anything to anything. No, it wasn't. It was Stu's.
It was Tony.
And I was going, yeah, it's a wicked idea. And in my head, I'd convinced myself it was mine. And then I remember the conversation we had in the pub. Stu was going like, well, stop telling anybody. We had that. Do you remember that conversation? I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Sorry.
Who is Tony D? He sounds
intense. He's like a battle MC.
Spurs.
The one with Robbie where he did and they battled each other.
That's right.
He said like the whitest northern man in the world. They battled each other. I believe. That's what they say in the hippie comedy groups, don't they?
Okay, so we've got some questions from the audience. You've seen this section of the show. And
regular listener, first time caller.
Yeah. Actually, before we do that, you said to Matt at the beginning of the season.
Do you know what I was going to do? I was going to find the text from it, because obviously we're in the playoffs, as you know, and we played Newcastle, because for anyone that doesn't know, Kristen's a Newcastle fan. That's your team,
Newcastle.
isn't it?
You happy about the promotion?
Yeah, definitely. It was lovely to see it in the way they did.
So
it was just...
tell me about like Benitez at the moment, because like it seems like everything was rosy and now it's not so much. There seems to be some grumblings and that he had to confirm that he will be at Newcastle next season. And
the thing is, the managers that came before him under Ashley, let's say after Houghton, you can include Houghton to a degree. Houghton didn't have much power because he was Chris Houghton, his first proper job. It could have just been a broken clock being right twice a day. The men after him, Pardew, I would say maybe Carver, McLaren, they were all very much yes men. They were so appreciative of the opportunity to get back into football at a decent level. They didn't have the gumption to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not, operating with those budgets. Yeah. Benitez has the sway to say, look, either we do it my way or we don't do it. Yeah. And he's done that all the way through his career. Yeah. And the thing that I think probably just tipped him over the edge was the way they won the title in the 89th minute. Well, it's one thing to get promoted. Yeah. And I saw a lot of players and spoke to them, and before they were all like, oh, I'm just, I'm happy to go up. There was only really Paul Dummett that said, no, if we don't win the title, it's a failure. Yeah. And so the way they won it in the 89th minute, the whole stadium erupts and all this kind of thing. I even wrote as much. You can't give him a penny less than he wants now. Because if you do, then the fans will massively turn. You thought it was bad before, get even worse now. Because you've got a manager that wants to stay, wants to build something, and won't need a multitude of staff around him to do it. He's happy to spend 16, 17 hours a day building stuff because he's just that way inclined.
Do you think... Do you think Ashley needs to be given some credit now? I know he's not likeable. I know Newcastle fans hate him. And I know he's oversaw 2 relegations.
Yeah, 2 relegations.
But, he's done what is quite difficult in getting you back up. It's not a guarantee. You saw that with Villa, big club. Leeds have just disappeared. Yeah. Is there anyone around Newcastle going...
They've got a fucking pretty good squad, though, and a pretty decent budget.
You think if they didn't go up, that would be a joke?
Nah, well, in a way, but it's tough because Villa have done that, really. Yeah. Yeah. But, I don't know. I look at the Newcastle situation. In fact, fuck it, you answer that, sorry, about Mike Ashley first.
It's very easy to waste money. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I think the thing with Newcastle is they've had 2 owners in my lifetime. Well, actually 3. Freddie Shepherd and now Mike Ashley.
That's who.
Who are the polar opposites of each other. Yeah. There was a story many years ago of Freddie Shepherd spending the sponsorship money for the next season during the current season and signing off all sorts of things. Mike Ashley, I think, fixed a lot of the problems that Shepherd started. He made cost cutting more, but he took it too far the other way. And to the point where even the pitch was, the players that were on the pitch, it was a cost cutting exercise. Like, how can we sign this guy for 5 and sell him for 15? But then you have to replace him with a 15 million caliber player. But how do you find the next £5 million player? Right. It's just, it was too risky. And there was, I think Derek Lambias was his name. He likened it to a casino with the different coloured chips. Right. And he said, we can only have so many purple chip players, i.e. like big first team players. And I just think that's a really nasty way to look at building a squad. Because the best squads is where everyone's together and fight. You look at Chelsea, who've just won the league. I don't think there's 11 purple chip players in there and there's just a few stragglers. They all think they're pushing towards the same thing. And when you start to separate and quantify players by, well, he is this calibre and he is this calibre, I think you instantly start to divide.
Can I ask what coloured chip Musa Sissoko was? Do you think?
I think he was the Joker in the deck of cards. In saying that, though, I feel bad. I don't want to pile it on him because I think in the right system he would work. I don't think that system is Spurs, unfortunately. You need to break teams down. He doesn't really break teams down.
He can run through players, literally.
On the counter-attack, he's amazing because he can just cover the ground. Yeah. That's the problem.
Maybe they, with the Spurs and him thing, they didn't anticipate that you'd get to the level that you've actually got to as consistently, because from what I see of Spurs, no matter who you're playing, you keep the ball, you you force your identity on them, and it's kind of like I've seen with Wagner and with Liverpool. They've kind of got one way of playing that's successful to a point, but you need to have 2 or 3 different ways of playing so you can shift it up. And in order to do that, a lot of times you might need to have some different elements in the squad and some different players that do different jobs. Yeah. And maybe actually it's all happened quicker than Pochettino thought, because when I look at you guys playing, and I don't watch loads of Premier League ball, but the little bits that I do watch and see, it seems like you are consistently you've kind of broken that barrier now, whereas you used to before be playing the big teams and it was almost you'd go into it expecting to lose. You're going into it now and you're not changing who you are and what you're doing. There's the belief that, well, we're playing Chelsea, we can still play our way of playing and get the result, and we can play Arsenal, and we're not going into it now thinking, shit, we need to react to them. You go in and go, they've got to react to us. So maybe it happened quicker, or maybe they had him in, he was in there so that if you needed to play a different way, you needed to just sit back and kind of and employ a whole different way of playing, then Sissoko would have come into bear.
You haven't spent a lot either, that's the problem.
No.
Not just comparative to your rivals, like £30 million player to Tottenham is a big deal. Yeah. And I've said recently, the thing I really think you need to improve on, you need to refine your process for buying big players like that. Because Soldado, Lamela, it might sound harsh with Lamela, but
he's kissed a few frogs, didn't they?
Yeah, he's been injury prone a little bit. He's only kicked on since Pochettino got there. Yeah. And the fact that those 3 have cost close to 90 million, but not improved you. That for me would be a concern. Looking at that.
I mean, I would say Lamela outside of injury has improved us. Yeah. But I understand that over his career he's been kind of at Tottenham.
Peaks and troughs. Yeah.
Very much, and look, probably more troughs than peaks.
Getting back to Newcastle, so with Rafa, it's a couple of things, a couple of trends that seem to have been happening. One is that, and someone was telling me that Neville had wrote about this the other day, that there's, you look at Huddersfield, you look at a lot of these northern clubs. There's not the catchment area. There's not the business. There's not the money around the areas that really allow them to a club to grow like you get in the south. You can see Brighton, for example, getting promoted like Bournemouth did, and being able to attract, cash, sponsorship, players because of geographically where they are. And there's been a trend away from these industrial towns that used to dominate kind of football to kind of more around your capital cities and your good climates, etc. So it's kind of challenge. So that's one of the trends that seems to be kind of going on. Another one of the trends that seems to be happening from what I can see in football, you don't get that many managers now that are, in fact, even players where they stay at the same place for a long period of time. Yeah. You don't get these projects that are built. Everyone's gone very, very short term. So when Newcastle, given the geography of the situation, it's challenging to build a team that's going to win honours from that far north, I think, because some players are going to look, well, I can be in London and be around all this, or I can be in Newcastle and, be around what? Just a good night out and Geordie Shore or something. That's pretty much it.
It's just a long way.
Joking, of course. But But for Newcastle to sit there and have a manager that's saying, I want to build something, and a manager that's of that pedigree, that he's known and respected, he's won everything, to have that, it's an amazing situation. And I mean, I really hope that Newcastle go on and actually build a dynasty, because we've always, for years and years and years, we've known the support there is fucking incredible. Yeah. That stadium is always full. That wherever they go away from home, they're always going numbers. Great support, and it's just they've never seemed to have had everything in place. You kind of come close a couple of times, but now it feels like there's actually an opportunity if they give Rafa what he needs and they get behind him, that you could actually build a nice 5 to 10 year project whereby you actually build a dynasty that's going to be competing continuously at the top of that league. Is that possible?
It is. The geography is a hard point. The best way I can explain it is Newcastle fans, some will poke fun at Sunderland fans because one has an airport and the other doesn't. I mean, strictly speaking, it's in Ponteland, so it's not Newcastle's airport, but it's called Newcastle Airport. That highlights the problem a little bit. Roy Keane talked about it many years ago, that you've got to pay a little bit of a tax to get guys up here. Yeah. Or up there, I should say. Because families, wives, however, if you want to think it's a valid reason or not all families want to move up north into the look at the fact that Payet came to West Ham. One of the main reasons, bar the money, was the fact he got to live in London. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't live here, but I can accept imagine if I'm well off, it's a wonderful place to live.
Yeah.
If I'm on 120 grand a week, it's great.
London's one of the best cities in the world. It's got everything, on your doorstep. There's all kinds of cultures here. You can get amazing cuisine from everything. Any shows here, and also it's a gateway. London, there's a few different airports, and you can fly to anywhere.
Exactly.
So you can, within 8 hours you're in Dubai. It's an amazing place to live. So yeah, for any rich, affluent family that's bringing over some kids, your missus and stuff like that, they're gonna you're gonna get that pressure, aren't you? When it comes to where we're gonna live, then we can live up here or we can live. They're gonna be like, move to fucking London. Sign for Bournemouth. That's what you're gonna get. Sign for Bournemouth. I want to be on the coast.
When Jermaine Defoe thought that Toronto was in America.
Yeah.
He got down. He's like, it's good to be in America. Like, whoa.
I felt sorry for him.
If we don't tell him, he'll never work it out.
Because he was in the American League.
Yeah.
There's a story like that with Rob Lee. I don't know how well you know North East geography. Middlesbrough is closer to London than Newcastle.
Yeah.
Kevin Keegan convinced Rob Lee that Newcastle was closer to London than Middlesbrough. At no point did he think to get a map out and go, hang on a minute.
Well, you'd take your word for it.
I love the Venky's one as well, because didn't the Venky's buy Blackburn and they didn't know that you could get relegated out of the Premier League?
Yes.
I love that one.
They also filmed a really bizarre chicken advert
Yeah,
with the team, with David Dunn and Ryan Nelson.
I remember. What did you, just quickly, when you sent that text message to Matt after you played in the second game, what happened? So
we chatted, didn't we? Because we were. I think I was like, right.
Did you pump Newcastle?
We did. We were literally Adam on the run.
I remember we were chatting, and I think you were like, "Oh, I'd be pleased if we get a draw here."
Of course.
And I was watching them, and I thought, "Oh, they're really organised. They're not just." I've seen teams sit deep, but they were actually, and constantly Wagner was giving them instructions: do this, go here, and they played really well, and they were a good counter-attacking team. And I said I could see them getting the playoffs if they hit the potential.
Yeah. Was that a big shout at the time?
It was, yeah.
They just avoided relegation the previous season.
Yeah, it was the second game. Yeah, he was the first person to say it, because I hadn't even seen him play yet, because it was the second game of the season.
Yeah.
And Kristan was like, I think you guys could sneak into the playoffs. I was like, sure.
Yeah, so if any of you out there thinking, who's this guy?
What does he saw know? That, yeah. That was the first person that said it. And he was like, you're going to love Aaron Moy, and he's my favourite ever.
He's like a more disciplined John Joe Shelby.
Go on, what's going to happen to Tottenham next year?
I'd have to see who you sign first, because that's the thing. You've got the money, you've got a nice new stadium.
Sign, is it?
It just depends who you bring in, because.
Well, who should we bring in? And
you'd love Dybala, I know that.
Oh mate,
it's brilliant, isn't it?
Who wouldn't love him? Like you play. Is Tottenham stay there forever?
Not forever, but for a long time. Because I think it just works for him.
And where did he come from, Dybala?
Palermo.
So he came up from. He lives in Italy.
He's Argentinian.
Yeah.
Was it I think it was Instituto or somewhere like that. It's like in the second tier. It was a really good pickup by Palermo to sign him. I think third parties owned him or something like that.
In Argentina.
Yeah.
So he went over to Palermo.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, he had a chance at Polish citizenship, which made the move like logistically easier through red tape and stuff.
Polish citizenship, right?
He couldn't get that. I think he got Italian citizenship instead, moved to Palermo, and the owner Zamparini, who is crazy,
I know.
He used to. I don't think he does it now. When he was stressed and Palermo were playing, he would drive around the city in a taxi, just smoking.
Is this the guy who's full of tattoos?
No, that's the guy who's taken over. That's
Palermo
the
is
American
a mental team.
Yeah,
I love him.
I
love him.
They signed him, and Zamparini said, "I think he's the next Messi." And everyone was like, "Oh, someone's been drinking de-icer again."
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, Messi stylistically is a bad comparison, but I think of he's certainly a great player. He's more like a less refined. Actually, no, a more refined Tevez is how I said him recently.
Yeah. It's just I love him. I love how much? 200 million. I'm ready to pay. I'm ready to go.
See why you paid 30 for Sissoko now?
200 mil. Get him in. Tottenham. What?
Sorry, we can't not ask you about the last ever game at White Hart Lane.
Can't talk about it.
Why not?
So sad.
Bittersweet.
So sad. Do you know what? I will tell you about it, but I was sitting there the whole time, and I was kind of waiting for the tears, and then it was over, and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Everyone around me just starting to flood to tears.
Well, people were just crying.
There were a lot of upset people, and having spoke to people, you realise that it's not just to cry over football. You know, it takes something extreme happening. Generally, you're getting pumped by one of your rivals for the reason for crying, and you have to be a child generally.
Speaking of which, James, did you cry when you played
and crying?
Did you cry when Newcastle pumped you 6-1 earlier in the season? Was it 6-1 or 6-0?
I don't think they got a 1, if I'm honest.
Was it 6-0?
Yeah, 6-0. It was November, so I was able to cope with it.
Yeah.
It was difficult.
Okay.
Got a draw at St James's though, so swings and roundabouts.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, mate. You say.
Yeah. So it was just it was an amazing day. It was the best experience I've ever had going to football. It meant more than the game itself. The stadium. Everybody looks at their stadium with fondness generally, unless they've got some sort of identikit stadium like the Emirates. Everyone looks at their stadium and it's home to them, and everyone else's is just a place where you have to try and get a result. But to your own football club, that's your home. That's where you play, and that's where you worship your side. And you kind of look across and all of the things that I've done there, going with my family. You know, Spurs.
It's the passing of time that makes it sad a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. And every area of the pitch, I remember celebrating with my family, being with my dad.
It's like moving out of a house that you grew up with your family in, I guess,
into a bigger one, and you kind of it's logical. It's logical. Everybody
the
wants
memories,
that, but it's gone. They're gone. Everything that we know about Tottenham historically and where all that memory was made, all those memories were made, is now just got erased to videos on YouTube. And in our heads, which isn't enough. It's not. That isn't enough. You know. So you forget. You're leaving all that behind. And I was deeply sad walking away, thinking it's done.
Yeah.
And now we have to do this again in a brand new stadium. And I wonder if football, the soul in football, is so different from when it was when I was younger. I don't know if it will be possible.
Yeah.
To feel the same.
To feel
way.
that magical way.
For the young kids going, it will be for them.
Is that because you've bridged two time periods though? I'd make it sound like you're Doctor Who, but you know what I mean. In terms of you were.
Sports.
We grew up in an era where, you know, you there was a decent chance you might see the Star Striker in a pub, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're gonna have to pay an extortion amount to get in the same nightclub as you. So it's a different experience.
Yeah.
And the feeling of loss that you have is because you're not getting that experience back.
Yeah, I think maybe. I think the game is better in so many facets now, but having a connection with your football club is definitely worse. You fight to love your club against everything, against ticket prices, against the insipid atmosphere in grounds, against fans that are obsessed with success rather than what's beautiful about your football club. So you're fighting against all that to kind of to hold on to something that you love about your club. I think it's just my age and cynicism about the game, really, to be honest. I think the kid who's 8 walking into the new White Hart Lane for the first time, they're going to be blown away in a way that I never was.
But you must have, though, when the first time you went to White Hart Lane.
Yeah, but imagine going into that stadium, how big it is when you're 8. Like, it was amazing going into White Hart Lane when I was a kid, but the stadium was relatively small.
Yeah.
Imagine it twice as big with lights and, you know, that single tier stand.
They do say that.
My head would have exploded as an 18-year-old.
The first walk up the steps, like when the first time you see a pitch, you never forget.
It's an incredible feeling. Even to this day, when I walk out into White Hart Lane.
Well, so I've had that in that we've changed. We moved grounds.
Yeah.
And I didn't see, because your game was on the radio. I was coming back from the Huddersfield game at the weekend. I went to the Sheffield Wednesday playoff match.
Yeah.
So I've not seen any of the. But just as you were talking about it, then I was remembering our move from Leeds Road to the Alfred McAlpine Stadium, as it was called, and I remember it was because again. So when was that? It's been like 1995 or something. So still a little bit old football if you think it's like 20 years ago or whatever now.
Yeah.
And I remember what was amazing about that was in the last 10 minutes of the game, the whole of the crowd had started to get over the barriers and onto the pitch. So at first it started like a ring round, a human ring, like round the touchline. But as more people were getting on, it was inching forward. Yeah. So you couldn't even see the touchline anymore because it was humans that had become the touchline. That was amazing. And everyone on the pitch and stuff like that. But people were literally just grabbing whatever they could. So you on the way out, you were then seeing people walking like holding a toilet seat.
On Sunday, it was like the last days of Gomorrah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was seriously. People would just taking it, and the stewards would look at him and was like, is this allowed? Can we misbehave like this? Because you get told off for doing anything. Yeah. And there was people just smoking, walking around, smoking fags, drinking beer, taking beer into the thing, and it's like...
And that was just a circle.
Yeah. But everybody... what you mentioned about going on the pitch, it was an amazing thing.
Did that happen? Yeah.
Mate, you should see the images. They're incredible. The pitch, you couldn't see grass with people on it, and I was stuck in the fucking top tier. But you looked at it, I looked at that, and I thought... So I thought that is incredible, and then the tannoy guy on the tannoy came over and went, "Can everybody please get off the pitch?" And everyone's like laughing. It's like, "Yeah, all right." But so for me, that was ours. That was the supporters' right. Yeah. This is our stadium. I know it's owned by someone else. Yeah. I know Tottenham's owned by Enoch and Daniel Levy, but it's our club. Yeah. And without us, none of that means anything. And that was the way we were going to say goodbye. It wasn't in the plan. It wasn't what the club wanted to happen. But that was Spurs fans.
I think they kind of have to probably say that, though. I'm sure. Because they can't sit and go, yeah, everyone on the pitch, because that's probably breaches certain policies or regulations where if anything happened, then they'd be gullible, they'd be culpable if they...
Yeah, 100%.
So there's probably some of them things.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that completely.
Football's a bit funny like that, isn't it? It's a massive investment on your part, but you don't really get anything tangible in return.
No, just the hope that you win.
Don't. You pay for it. Football fans pay for everything, but we get no say. We get taken for granted.
Like any other hobby or passion, if you put that much money in, say, archery or something, you would get something tangible in return. You would develop a skill or something. Football, you put money, time, effort,
and often all it gives you is sadness.
And you don't get any real say.
It's the weirdest thing. Yeah.
And they know that it got you by the balls. They know you're not going anywhere.
But Flav, just to give you hope, that now feels like home for me and for everyone there. Yeah. So it kind of can actually happen, you know. And
it needs memories.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Of course. Yeah.
It's not home until there's memories.
I guess I'm not over White Hart Lane being gone.
Of course you know.
Yeah, because you grew up with it though.
Huh?
You grew up with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about all the moments you saw on the pitch. That is the emotional attachment there.
And there's that, but also just the times you with your family and you know, White Hart Lane's special, but it's like the place where my family and my old man would get together and we bond. I guess.
The only thing I found a bit annoying about the whole thing, if I'm honest with you, because listening to it there were then, I forget what game was on next, but there was something that was on the radio. It might have been just 606, which was horrible. Even Chris Sutton, he's so annoying. But
that's his job.
He's so annoying. But so that was on in the car, and they kept going, all right, let's go to White Hart Lane now. What's happening now? And they're like, yeah, well, they're playing a video, and I think Glenn Hoddle's here, and so and it was just like, fucking hell. The amount of teams that move grounds, I've never heard them. Like when we left Leeds Road, I'm sure they weren't going over there every 5 minutes to see if Mick from Brighouse had got a toilet seat. But it just sounded like they were hamming up. They were overdoing it.
No.
Really. And I was thinking, is that just because they're in the top 4?
Oh, you mean the radio?
Yeah.
Sorry. It would have been really hard to... Because not much really did happen. The ceremony was really pulled back. There was no razzmatazz at all. I was a little bit worried because the geezer drove a Land Rover on this big trailer on the back, and I was like, what is going on? Please don't Adele pop out of that and then start singing or something like that. I was really worried about it being
that really, Emily Sander out.
Just start singing Hometown Glory or something from I
thing hello.
Oh yeah, can you know what I mean? And then what actually it was, literally we just wheeled out some of the greatest players that we've ever had.
They were in the Land Rover.
No, they weren't. They came out. The Land Rover was just a screen, so that thankfully, just a screen so that everyone could see what was going on. And they wheeled them out. There was a little sing-song. They fired ticker tape into the air because Spurs have a history of Spurs fans throwing ticker tape in the air. And
that's probably from your Argentinian, because that was an Argentinian thing, wasn't it? And the 1978 World Cup was the... Was it that one? That was a ticker tape World Cup, yeah. So that's probably a bit of it, yeah.
And it was just a massively dignified and the correct way to do things as opposed to what West Ham did, and that's what everyone was scared of, you know. Anyway, we've talked loads about Spurs. We've got some questions. How long have we been going, Jim?
55 minutes.
Right, good. So we'll do run through these questions and then we'll be done. What is your opinion? This is from David J. Douglas. What is your opinion of the condenser? So I put this in because I don't know what it means. What it means.
What's the opinion of the condenser?
Right. So explain to me what this
Makes
means.
a great cup of coffee, I know that.
What is your opinion of the condensers that small teams like Bournemouth and Watford dilute the Prem and that giants like Leeds, Forest, should be instant?
Is it a consensus that's spell checked wrong?
I don't know.
What's the...
Oh yeah, that's a good shout.
Is it?
I think it might be that.
Right, I thought
Apologies,
condensers was a type of footballer that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah, I thought it was like Volante or some kind of magic. You
like
know when people
false-
tweet like,
Yeah.
what was that tweet? Ozil is the highest interior, but they need a box-to-box Volante.
Yeah.
I spoke to that lad. He's a very nice lad, but I
Was it a
didn't
joke?
understand that. No, it was a genuine opinion.
What's the real question now then?
So what's your opinion on the consensus that small teams like Bournemouth and Watford dilute the Prem,
Well,
and that giants like Leeds, Forest, etc. should be there instead?
That's an interesting question.
You're there on merit, though.
Yes.
I think that's the
I don't
greatest.
think there should be any merit. I don't think Bournemouth do have a place in the Premier League.
I think you could look through a lens and say in a utopian world it would be Forest and Leeds and all the. But you have to remember at some point Leeds and Forest were historically the same standard as Bournemouth are now. You've got to give people a chance to make history. That's you could close the leagues and it wouldn't do anything.
And also, if you live by that rule now, then in 1950, and they'd have lived by that same rule, then some of the clubs that are now enjoying being top of the league wouldn't have come to bear.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like, at what point do you say this is the appropriate lineup? So it's bullshit. I hate that kind of stuff. You know,
And who will decide who's relevant as well? You know.
Yeah.
Is Leeds more relevant than Bournemouth because Ellen Road's bigger than the Vitality?
But there's a bunch of these clubs in the Championship now that, like Sheff Wednesday, we're playing. They're giving it because of the size of our crowd, because of our history. Not that I'm sure they've actually got that good a fucking history. But they think that they should be in the top flight. Leeds think they should be in the top flight. Villa think they should be in the top flight. You know, Kristen said it's you're there on merit.
Yeah.
And actually, I quite like it when some of these clubs go up and upset the apple cart. And you know what? I think that because of this trend about football getting more southern because of money and stuff like that, I think that Brighton, I think that Bournemouth as well are probably going to go on to stay up there for a while. And who knows, could with a bit of clever management and a bit of kind of forward thinking, might actually be able to create a sustained assault on that top sort of 7.
How long till QPR get up? I mean,
QPR's a small. They used to have a plastic pitch.
yeah, they did.
QPR used to have a how pony's that?
Yeah,
I feel like they've got so much potential though, and I'm not just saying that because he's off camera. I really do. I look at them.
Go on.
I look at them in London, and I think you've got such a kind of. I know a few years ago, James will correct me if I'm wrong here. They tried to pitch themselves as a boutique club. And they were like, "Oh, we can
What does
charge
that mean?
more, and like you know, we'll charge you more because we're Queen's Park Rangers, and tourists will like that because it's got Queen in and all this kind of daft stuff."
Yeah.
I do think when you look at the name and the iconography of the club, and I just think there's a lot of potential there. I did also watch. Is it 4-year plan? The documentary, 5-year plan, or 4-year plan?
Great
I
dog.
always get this wrong, but I think it's 5. I think it might be 5.
Mm.
I don't know, I always get it wrong.
I don't know why. I just watched it and was like, I love this club.
It's fascinating.
It just looks like a beautiful club.
3 or 5.
Like a big old country
Four.
house
Just
that's
doesn't
got
feel
some
right.
floorboards missing.
What?
Like a big old country house that's got some floorboards
Yeah.
missing. That's how I look at QPR.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to
it's-
change their manager in there. I think Ian Holloway's the one.
It's difficult because emotion. If I'm making the decision as the owner of QPR,
Yeah.
probably yeah.
What,
But
you
if
getting
I'm
rid of him?
but if I'm a fan, it's so much more difficult because you know he cares, and sometimes, I know he's probably, bless him, he's dying inside at the minute me saying this, but sometimes it is more important to have someone that cares, not if you want to achieve your potential.
Is that fair, James?
I can understand that point.
Yeah.
I think he's a better manager than people give credit. If you take away the character and all the
Yes.
others.
Despite players coming in and saying he doesn't know what's going on.
One player.
All right, we'll move on. Shin Axon on Twitter, he says, ask Flav about White Hart Lane and hopes for next season. Okay, we've kind of done that. So, Lovren is wank. On Twitter, he
What
says...
was your first game at White Hart Lane, if you don't mind asking?
First game was Bournemouth 1985. Bournemouth versus Spurs. We won 3-2. And I fell asleep.
Oh.
I was 4.
Oh, well, that's
I wrote an article about that actually. I'll send it to you if you want to read it.
What? Any favourite goals that stand out as well?
Ooh.
I always like to ask that.
Yeah, my favourite goal, there's so many, but I think Jermaine Genius' first goal against Arsenal in the 5-1 win, he scored in the first minute. He kind of carried the ball and hit it across, and it went off the post. Or maybe the second goal in that, the own goal by Bentner.
Huh, yeah.
But man, I don't know. Too many. Klinsmann's overhead kick, that was pretty good. Yeah. So Lovren is wank. He says, Lovren isn't wank though, is he? He's quite good.
He's all right. I wouldn't pay 20 million for him.
No. Are Chelsea going to continue their dominance next season, or will teams adapt, do you think?
That's a very good question. Conte is very pragmatic, and I think if you look at the Premier League this season, the coaches that are married to their ideology have struggled, like Pep Mourinho, for example. Conte, we did a documentary, me, Lawrence, and a lad called Glenn, and there's a saying kind of in Italy, it doesn't translate so well, that a coach is like a tailor in the sense that he has to make things fit the players rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And Conte said that once, that he basically messed up Juventus' pre-season a little bit and said, from now on I'll pick the best clothes for the players, meaning the formation. And so for that reason, I think he will be working on something now to adapt next season. And as we were talking, I think before we went live, they've got 4 or 5 young players I think could fill out that squad and give them something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because the thing is with young players, if you when you get like a cup tie and you bring loads in, I don't think that's always the greatest way to do it. I know Arsenal did it a lot, like Clichy era. If you can put one in, then it lets them see the standard and you see how they handle. Whereas if you put 4 or 5, it's 4 or 5 youth team guys playing together.
That's interesting. Because there's rumours that Walker was leaving Tottenham for Man City. He definitely is. You saw him grabbing a piece of grass from the thing. That.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean that is nice. He played 10 years there, but he's definitely going to Walker. But Spurs apparently they really rate Kyle Walker-Peters, the young right back we've got.
Okay.
And I wonder, it takes quite a bold manager to do that in terms of sell what is probably the premium wing back in the country in Kyle Walker.
Yeah, that's true.
And replace him with a guy who's not played any Premier League football at all, or at least as an understudy to Trippier. So it would be interesting if Conte does do that, when I guess the desire would be, but for most managers would be, I've got 100 million, why wouldn't I spend this?
I mean, that's the thing with their, I know their loan army gets a lot of criticism because it's seen as hoarding players and it's
58
we've
players.
criticised it.
Yeah, it's like disingenuous to the league almost.
Don't feel right though. It's more about that. It enables them to create a lot. It's like being able to buy loads and loads and loads of houses and just rent them out then to other people.
Like value.
If there was an amount of players that you could own, then it'd allow other people to actually own the rights to those players.
Yeah.
So it actually inflates the value and the premiumness, but it enables them to kind of own it.
I feel like Parma did that just before they went bust. They had like 150 players on their books.
Parma did.
Like first team players, not like youth players. But the reason I bring that up is I spoke to a Chelsea fan called Jay Cohen, who's also a sports lawyer, very intelligent guy, and he said that if you look at it, the way Chelsea do it, and it's better to quantify transfers in amortization. I think I'm saying that right. Amortization. I'll go with that. Yes.
Financial terms.
In financial terms, it's actually a much better way to squad build, because for every player that you sign for 1-2 million that doesn't work, you get a Lukaku or say a De Bruyne who you buy for like 15 and sell for a ridiculous amount. So often those big sales will cover the losses of the rest. Yeah. And so actually it's probably the best way to do your business.
It's a lot of people, when they're making investments, they might make say 10 investments at 100 grand, that kind of level, because they know that they only like 2 out of 10 might come off, and those 2 out of 10 would cover the exposure for all 10 essentially, and then some.
You've got a very good reputation now as a youth producer. So if you look at, let's say, Man United, for example, it's probably not hard for them to sell a reserve player for 400,000.
Yeah.
And then if you put, because I know Daniel Levy's very smart when it comes to business decisions and things, if you then put 10% of future sale or an extra 100,000 when he makes a debut, or so, those kind of incentives, it keeps the lower league club that potentially buys them interested, because it's still financially prudent for them. But it means that theoretically you're going to make more than the 400 needed.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, we've got top fives. Top five time. I didn't write any down.
I was just looking at the comments from last week, actually.
Yeah.
Interesting one, because we seem to upset a few Chelsea fans.
Well, most fans don't like being called like plastic or bad fans.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they got upset.
But what I do just like is that because a few persons gone, we've been getting called CUNTS, and then someone I just realised.
Yeah, I don't know what that word means.
It means they don't like you.
Yeah.
And then I just got, but one of them who I think criticised us for that, then said, I would like to apologise to Matt for my comments earlier in the week.
Oh.
It was only Flav who I strongly disagree with. What Matt said was spot on. So I love that.
Is he a Chelsea fan? What are they worried about? I'm just
weird like that, though, isn't it?
Just some geezers. Our opinion doesn't matter. We're not influencing anybody.
I know. And we're also not saying these are facts. We're actually just having a chat.
Yeah, look, people think much worse of Chelsea than us having to go at people for leaving early.
Yeah. YouTube in general, the comments section can be a really mean place, though.
Yeah.
Because it's the anonymity. All over, it's the anonymity.
Yeah.
You don't have to put your face there, you don't have to put your name, so you can say,
whatever
I'm
you
sure
want.
You'll probably get some on this one. Why does he look like a fat Elon Musk?
Someone asked, someone did ask
true,
if you and James got your haircut together. It's made me laugh
No.
a bit.
But you know, the funny thing is as well, on the flip side of that, it can be such a beautiful place, because we, on the front three, we had a guy DM us recently say, look, I'm suffering depression on off. The podcast really helped me kind of just stay calm and things like that, and give a bit of perspective.
Yeah.
And stuff like that is really nice that people can connect to that stuff, because depression is, there's not even words for it right now in the English language for what it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, if Aaron Lennon's taught us anything, it's that, look, money is no band-aid for mental health issues.
No.
If anything, it can exacerbate them.
I had a young man come up to me at Tottenham. He's probably watching this, actually. He likes Paul Street, and he said, he talks about him. He was kind of having suicidal thoughts, and he spoke to Calm, and he found our podcast through Calm, because we support them on the Fighting Cock.
Oh, that's nice.
And he said, like, you don't know what the podcast has done and what it means to me, and it was like, we actually don't know. It was an incredible thing to hear him say. Yeah, it is. Depression is a terrible, terrible thing.
Football can be escapism though as well. That's the other thing. Like, my mum passed in 2009. The next day I played football, because for like an hour and a half, I just didn't have to think about it. And then realistically, when I look back, that's probably why I dived into football so much, because you're not thinking about it. If you're running around trying to tackle someone past, you're not thinking about anything that's bothering you at that point. And for me, when people say, why do you love football? It's partly because it's opened so many doors. Like, at the minute, I'm very lucky that I get to travel a lot, I get to come see you guys, that kind of thing. But then also, there's a good part of it that is, I was talking to someone recently about this. There's a girl in Canada doing a book on football and how it's shaped mental health. And the way I explained it to her is, I have a love-hate relationship with football in some ways, because sometimes it can make you feel really terrible. Not necessarily the results, but when you work in it, it can make you feel very self-conscious, like YouTube comments, for example. They can say how big are that guy's ears, and you think, Jesus, they are. I could fly with these things.
Don't bring that up.
And it can do that, and then also it can make you feel euphoric. Like last Sunday when the Newcastle won the league, I bumped into Rafa Benitez afterwards because he was just walking around the stadium.
Does he recognise you?
No, not in the slightest. But I had a 2-minute chat with him that was better than any question I'd thrown at him that entire year. And there's I think it's a allegory maybe in Native American culture that says you can control the way you feel. There's a wolf that has hate, anger, all the negative emotions, and there's a wolf that has love, compassion, empathy. You decide which one you feed. And for me, that's football. It's a decision on which one I choose to feed, and that's why sometimes, like I said, the depression gets a lot and it gets very heavy. There are other times where you skip to work and you skip back and you're like, I just spoke to Rafa Benitez. You get home and you say, Dad, literally had a conversation with him. He'll never probably remember it. He'll probably think, there was a weird northern guy that spoke a little bit of Spanish that was patchy. But for me, I'll be like, I spoke to Rafa Benitez.
My daughter's got Native American blood, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right. It's cool, isn't
It's a fascinating culture.
it?
It was really done over by American cinema in the 50s. Painted them as the bad guys. Not even the what do you call it, scalping. That wasn't a Native American thing.
No.
That was a thing that the Americans did. Or Americans is probably the wrong word.
And they're still doing this way of demonising people around the world. That's what their foreign policy is built on. That's where they learnt it then.
The Americans did that to prove that they had killed a Native American to collect the reward.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's that you watch a film and you think, oh, it's the Native Americans that scalped. No, it was the settlers that came there.
Bloody buggers.
Yeah.
They also give them smallpox.
Did they? Oh, I didn't know.
Killed them all.
So top 5. I can't find the comment now, but one of the suggestions, I can't find his name to check him.
Yeah.
But it was top 5 porn genres.
Oh, okay, Kristen.
Can I just cite feminist from 1 to 5? Or is that going to get me? Is that going to get me?
No,
sincerely
that is
vitriolic comments.
The safest way to do it.
I did watch a documentary about that on Netflix recently. About I think she might be a Swedish director. Her name escapes me. Who is trying to make pornography that is more feminist is definitely the wrong word here. More about a connection and love, and not a man aggressively having sex with a woman. It's
I don't know why that was so funny. You're right, it shouldn't be, and it's very much about the objectification of women, and something that I definitely am against.
But that happens in football too, though. It's bizarre to me. Kate Abdo, you know, the Sky Sports presenter. I watched an interview with her recently, and she said, I think women have to work twice as hard to get a gig or something like that. And I'm inclined to agree with her. Because the amount of times I've seen that happen, it's utterly bizarre. Some of the biggest poop talkers, shall we say, in our industry are blokes. And some of the most insightful people I've ever watched are women. There's this weird, I don't know, I think our whole industry right now is at a very funny point right now. And what I mean by that is it's changing at a rate, I think, unlike ever before. So, for example, this entire Ball Street network and all that kind of stuff, it's being run by people. You were a journalist, I think, before?
Yeah.
Or you studied journalism, am I right saying that?
Yeah, that's right.
So you studied journalism, you've got a media background as well, but there are a lot of people that don't have media backgrounds.
Yeah.
That have just picked up a camera and said, this is what I want to do, this is the essence of my passion. The difficulty with that, I think, in part, though, is you've got to then try and self-govern yourself and try and know who to trust and all that. And on the flip side, you've got the traditional media who then say, I don't know if I like this. This feels, we're the big dogs in this yard.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that's a real thing. But they can't. It's almost like you can't stop it now.
Oh yeah, 100%. The dog's out the cage.
Yeah, definitely.
But then equally, I think in wider culture, there's I don't know if it's a hangover from Trump or whatever, but you look at people and they say, look, I've got an opinion and you've got to listen to my opinion. And it's like, yes, that's completely right. Freedom of speech is paramount. You are entitled to your opinion. But you are also entitled to have your opinion evaluated by a third party. So you could say, I think Harry Kane is the best striker in England. Yeah. And you could say, actually, it's Casey Palmer. You're both entitled to said opinion, and no one is stopped. That's the problem. A lot of people who have their opinion evaluated or criticised think that they're having their opinion shut down and not being given the opportunity to voice that opinion. Yeah. That's the key difference. Everyone has the option to voice it, but it doesn't have to be widely accepted. It can be evaluated. Yeah. Put that soapbox back under the chair.
Is that from one of the podcasts you've been listening to?
No, you know what it is. I'm my girlfriend at the minute, she's a lawyer, and she's possibly one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And
you just said my girlfriend at the minute, like you're thinking about dumping her.
No,
can't just break it.
Honestly,
to her,
quite the opposite.
Probably
the opposite. I think.
She's gorgeous, actually.
Bless him. Matt knew me. Yeah, Matt knew me when I had my last girlfriend as well, and to be honest, I wasn't very happy. But this one, the antithesis. I genuinely think she is the one. Oh. With that said,
I feel my land's the one as well.
I know it's a wonderful feeling.
No,
but the point is, she has, I would say, in a lot of ways, given me freedom to express myself, but then also made me think of the world in a much, because you know what I was like when I came down here. I was so focused on football, the rest of the world was just going around. I could tell you who Accrington's right back was, but I probably couldn't tell you just normal pop culture stuff because I was so invested in that.
Yeah.
And it's only now you move back and you start to, and you realise how things influence other things, like the Two Wolves, for example. It's, life's funny like that.
Well,
I actually learned a lot from
How old are you now?
28.
28. Still a young man. Still a young man.
But I must admit, I did learn a lot from you. Living with him for 6 weeks.
Oh, that's very kind.
Can I come live with you?
You can.
For 6 weeks.
You can, but...
You got a spare room, you said? Great.
When? You still living with your dad, don't you?
Yeah, I'm back with my dad.
He probably won't like that.
Well, he'd be alright, be fine.
It's not bad. I live with my dad. It's alright.
Yeah, it's fine.
And Scrappy,
I've got a problem with it, I'm
Scrappy's very fond of... They had a good bond with Scrappy. And
He's taking for
Kristen.
walks around... Was it Wimbledon? No, that's too
Wimbledon Park,
far.
yeah.
Alright, probably sharing that now.
I was wondering how you're going to get back to top 5 porn genres.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're not going to do it now. We're going to
let's
say,
just
sorry guys, what do you think that we are?
Currently into BBW. If you know, you know.
This is the Long Wall Street podcast. We'll see you at the far part. Thanks for coming along, mate, by the
Yeah.
way.
My
And good luck,
pleasure.
because you're going to America now, aren't you,
Yes.
to live? Today?
Not today to live full time, but I'll fly over there tonight.
Right.
Later tonight.
Well, safe flight. Thank you for coming. Good to see you.
Stay in touch, Kristan.
Always loved and welcome at Ball Street.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it? From where it started to where it is now.
Yeah, well, I mean, just going back to what you were saying about it being complete professionalising. You know, it is in transition, and we think sometimes we're like, what is 5% complete. But you can't, because you don't have money, you don't have infrastructure, everything's moving so quickly, it's very difficult to do what you want to do. But certainly I think, as you know from knowing me and Stu, there's a social conscience to what we're doing. We're not just we're not in this just to try and make short-term bucks, but we do also believe that there's a power of everyone kind of working together, and it's difficult to keep people reminded of that, and it's difficult to get people to appraise the world that way. But we want to help build a rising tide that will lift all boats. And if we get there, I certainly think that we will be more. What's the word? We'll have a better. We'll be able to sleep easier than I would expect traditional media companies will be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Because we won't be doing things just for the clicks and just to kind of, we want to give back to the game and help be watchful of it, because we love the game first rather than love money first.
That's why I quite like Ian Hislop. And have I got news for you?
Yeah.
Because he keeps everyone honest. Like if you've, I think you said recently something like everyone's got hypocrisy about something.
Hypocrisy makes life makes hypocrisy of us all.
Yeah.
Hypocrites of us all.
But then I think that's the brilliant thing. If you can stand there and go, actually,
Yeah.
like I've been guilty of it numerous times.
Of course, everybody is.
I didn't need that affirmation from you, but
Top 5 hypocrites.
I don't know. Yeah. Kristen Heneage, James Alcott.
It's better be 5 to 1.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, let us know your top 5s. Subscribe.
I'll be curious as to what people's top 5 porn genres are in the comments below. That would be an interesting. What?
May I suggest one?
Yeah.
Top 5 moments at your respective ground for you personally.
Okay. All right. There you go.
I'll think about that.
See you at the far post.
Latest potatoes.